All right, homeschoolers out there, disregard what's on the screen. That is not. That's economics, not. There.
Hi, Julia.
Anybody else you'd like to say hi to?
Hi, Vinny.
Johnny's out there. Come on. All right, yeah. Well, I'm not sure who actually watches it live, but when I do get done, there's usually like I think at least one of them tries to make sure they at least click on it, maybe to satisfy parents or something. That, hey, I went on there today, but it gives you, I don't know who it is, but it gives me the total minutes watched. Like at the end of the class, it'll say like 2 views with a total, like sometimes it'll say like 8 minutes watched. I'm like, okay, so they tuned in, but they can watch it later. It just uploads. But, all right, here we go. Crossword part 2. So you'll have 60 questions to study just from the crossword. I said there's 78, right? So you got your notes and you got the crosswords. Yeah, you may. Here we go. Number 3 across. The last major European battle of World War II. Some of you, your first thought was, hey, what was that last battle we talked about? Mr. Franklin made a big deal about it. It was the last offensive made by the Germans, but that didn't fit. The last battle was when Hitler went down, like literally, right? They were closing in on him from the east and the west. And the capital city of Germany, Mackenzie, that was the Battle of Berlin. Number 5 across, missing in action. We were looking for the abbreviation. Jaden, you are MIA. What's the abbreviation for killed in action? KIA. What's the abbreviation for prisoner of war? POW. Nagasaki's doom. What were we looking for there? This 2-word answer, when we say doom, I mean when it exploded over the city of Nagasaki, Nagasaki was no more. Yeah. Fat Man was the bomb that exploded over Nagasaki. Number 4, number 9 across. I thought that was funny. Number 9 across. Iwo Jima, famous. What's that battle most famous for? The Battle of Iwo Jima. A lot of lives sacrificed for your freedom, but what's it most famous for? What was the iconic image? What was the iconic image from the Battle of Iwo Jima, Derek?
The soldiers pushing up the flag.
The Marines pushing up the flag, and the photographer captures it as it's like at a 45-degree angle. You see like 5 of them, 4 or 5, hoisting the flag over Iwo Jima. Number 11 across, site of the first atomic explosion. You got a little confused, and I wish I could take credit for, hey, Hiroshima fits, but we gave him a little bit of a challenge here because it's not. I didn't realize Hiroshima fit. I should have just taken credit for it. Yeah, that was a pretty good crossword clue. But we were talking about literally in history the first detonation of such a weapon. It occurred where, Ben? In the desert of New Mexico. Number 13 across, the D-Day site. Where in France? What region of France did the Allies launch behind the leadership of Dwight D. Eisenhower, who was, by that time, leader of all the forces? What's the name of that region in France? Somebody knew. Serenity. What's the name of that region in France?
Normandy.
The beaches of Normandy. Number 16 across, married Hitler. Unfortunate fate of this lady was she marries the symbol of evil for the whole 20th century. And maybe what was in her favor, that her life was over the next day. Life was over that day. But yeah. Eva Braun, Braun. Little boy bomber. What do you mean by that? It was the B-29 bomber that carried Little Boy. What was the name of that B-29 bomber? By the way, if you went on the trip last year, you got to see that thing up close and personal. That is if you were actually paying attention and going through the museum like we were supposed to, like Luke, Jonas, and I. We didn't even get through the whole thing because we were reading everything, trying to soak up as much knowledge as possible. But if you were on the trip last year and you went to the Dayton Museum and you're standing next to this B-29 bomber, you're like, whoa. What was the name of it? Yeah.
Didn't they have the Fat Man there too?
Mhm.
Yeah.
A model. Yeah. What was the name of it?
Oh, wait, no. Are we on Hitler's married Hitler?
We are on
No. A little boy bomber.
Little Boy Bomber.
Enola Gay.
The Enola Gay. 20 across Solomon Islands battle. There were many battles in the Pacific on many islands. There were groups of islands that we gave you. This was the one that was in the Solomon Islands, and it was the biggest battle there. Yeah. Guadalcanal, Guadalcanal. Guadalcanal. Captured, killed, and hung upside down. Right there, paraded in the street, along with anyone else that they could find and capture that was they would consider guilty of these war crimes, of this tyrannical dictatorship that they had to live under and be censored by. And those who don't remember the past are doomed and destined to repeat it. So one of the key elements of tyrannical dictatorship is censorship. So anyone in America that is not a little bit uncomfortable with what we call cancel culture, no matter what side of the political aisle someone's on, and thankfully there are people on both sides that speak up vehemently against this, even though it's basically done by one side of the political aisle, that they try to cancel anyone that doesn't agree with them. That is a big component of tyrannical government, is to control all the information. So when you have someone like, what's the answer? Mussolini. When you have someone like Mussolini or a group of people that are like that think that they should be able to control all the information. It doesn't have to be one person. It could be a whole industry like Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, and all of a sudden only certain voices are allowed to be heard. That's a scary place to be for any country, for any group of people, that someone has a different opinion and you just cancel them. You just pretend they don't exist. You don't allow their opinions to be aired. That's and your generation, look, you're that generation. You've known nothing else, right? The old guy here has known a different world. You don't know any other world. It's going to be kind of hard for you to like disassociate yourself with those things, because it's part of your growing up. And a lot of times we don't want to disassociate ourselves with something that we're so accustomed to. Yeah, the world's bad and that's bad, and that's bad. I get it, it's bad, but it's like your family member. They're bad. You love them. You stick up for them. You try to make excuses for them. But hopefully we get alternatives. Hopefully there's alternatives to these places, and they can take the place of people that are basically tyrants. Twitter and those companies are tyrants. There's no way around it. You see people every day getting canceled because they got an opinion. By the way, Mussolini. Number 23, Battle of the Bulge season. Yeah. Winter. And this play, we talked about how this was kind of, I don't know if irony is the best word. Irony is one of those words that gets misused a lot. We've been taught that in language class. Like we use the word ironic when it doesn't really mean it's ironic. But I guess this fits in this case. Hitler's demise or doom when he tried to go into Russia to the east was the winter. It appeared for the first week or 10 days of the Battle of the Bulge that it was going to be it was going to be in his favor, the winter, right? He had caught the Allies by surprise, and they were basically surprised and stopped in their tracks, pun intended. The snow, the frigid temperatures, Their vehicles weren't able to move. Their supply lines for a short period of time were going to be cut off until Christmas Day. Things kind of turned. Winter. Destroyed August 6, 1945. We don't make you memorize a series of dates. There's not going to be like 100 dates on the test. There were a lot of dates in the notes. But one of the dates we probably should remember, because it's a pretty significant date, not just U.S. history, but in world history, this weapon was used. We talked about how excruciating the decision was to use it or not use it. The fact is it was used. And thankfully, 77 years later, we can say today that that type of weapon has never been used against the people since August 9th. But on August 6th was the first time. What happened on that day? What was destroyed, David? Hiroshima. A 10-mile diameter, we said. Utter destruction, even vaporized if you were right there in the eye. 27 across, the Russian army. A 3-letter word that we use to describe the Russian army, and really it's this 3-letter word we use to describe communists in general. Like today, we would call it blank China. Yeah, red. The Red Army of the communists, the Soviets. Do you have another synonym for them? Starts with a B. Communists, Soviets, Bolsheviks. So when you hear those words, they all refer to the regime in Russia that, by the way, is trying to be revived. Putin's a Bolshevik, a Bolshevist, a Bolshevik. How would you say that? Bolshevist or Bolshevik? A Bolshevist.
Yeah.
I didn't say he was full of something, Annie. I said he's a Bolshevist. Well, I just got a slight chuckle. This is good humor, people.
That's just nuts.
Putin, that's what he is at heart. I mean, he's a Soviet, believes in the Bolshevik way. Number 29 across, blank bomb. Hopefully this was a layup. McKenna, what'd you get for blank bomb? The atomic bomb, right? Number 1 down, the Admiral at Midway. Who was this great leader that the U.S. Navy had that was able to, I mean, you think about what was going on at this time. We had just been surprised at Pearl Harbor in December. So we were reeling. Then we go into the battle and Japan's trying to take the Philippines and we got destroyed. We had to leave the Philippines with our tail between our legs saying, okay, but I'll be back. Well, we got beat. And now if Japan keeps on that course, it's going to be game over. But there was a turning point in that battle at Midway, and it was led by Admiral, one of our great aircraft carriers today is named after this guy, the USS Nimitz, Nimitz. Number 2 down, General George S. Patton. You show a little more respect when you say that name. You say, General George S. Patton, sir. Listen, I wish I could have gone more. For the 18th time, we could study World War II for the whole year, right? So there's 78 questions. If we could have really got in depth, there could be like 200 questions, and we could have studied this the whole quarter, right? But George S. Patton, General Patton, someone I wish you could know better. Suffice to say, he would not be a general in the 21st century American Army. He wouldn't. He wouldn't be allowed. Old blood and guts would not be allowed to be a commander in the U.S. Army. Because the first time they said, okay, here's our mission today, sir. We are going to spend the next 2 weeks training our men in critical race theory. Are you kidding me? His job is to train a military to defend the greatest nation on earth if need be. And defend, that means kill people, literally rip their guts out if you have to, and bomb and annihilate things. And you're telling him his mission is he's got to sit in some classroom and teach people social politeness or whatever, all these. No, that stuff didn't fly back then. And we were in a much safer place. So anyway, I can't really, without parental supervision anyway, tell you to look into General Patton and his famous speech. And I couldn't play it. You have to bleep out every 10 seconds. Although it's the same word over and over. I told you that already. Great general, but couldn't be a general today. Our culture would not allow it. Same as, the biggest sporting event in the country. You watch it for the commercials, I know. But the Super Bowl, the guy's name on the trophy, he wouldn't be able to coach today. He wouldn't be able to coach. You're too mean. You might hurt people's feelings. Who is it, by the way, man? No, Vince Lombardi. All right, number 4 down. The strategy to defeat Japan. We're gonna, because they had by 1943 done what they set out to take control of the whole Pacific Ocean, right? So our job was we gotta piece by piece, bit by bit. We're gonna attack actually their weaker points first. We're gonna take their smaller outposts, easily defeat them. Use that as a launching pad to go to the next one. As we Frogger island by island on our way to the mainland. Hopefully the goal is by the time we get to the mainland, we will have decisively defeated them enough that we won't have to invade the mainland, because the whole time this is happening for 2 years, there is this knowledge that if we ever have to invade the mainland of Japan, it's going to be way bigger, way more costly, way more ugly than the Normandy invasion. So maybe they'll surrender by then. They probably never will. We know that. And that's what we talked about at the end. Island hopping was the answer. Number 6, there was a lot of tropical diseases that our soldiers faced when they got in environments that their body had no immunity to. And the biggest one, the one that took the most lives, it's a disease we still have to worry about today if you travel overseas. Malaria. And it's like, does anybody love America anymore? And maybe you wonder why most of your parents, because I know a lot of your parents, you might even wonder why a lot of your parents, when you ask them, and I've talked to them, and I know a lot of them, and they're like me, and they're asked who their favorite president is. What's the most common answer if you were to ask your parents and grandparents who their favorite president is? Anybody? You've ever asked them that? You've ever talked about that? I've talked to some of your parents. They share the same favorite president. Who is it? Besides George Washington. He wasn't president when I was alive. Mackenzie, Jake, Ronald Reagan, right? You never heard that name before? And you might wonder, why do people like this guy so much? In 5th grade, were we still celebrating his birthday when you guys were in 5th grade? So we tried to give you a glimpse in 5th grade, but that was a long time ago. You don't remember much. Why this guy was so loved? Why after he was elected in 1980, became president in 1981, and was mocked and joked about a lot in the media through 1981 into 1982 because of the things he was doing? They said, this isn't going to work. They were calling it Reaganomics. And Reaganomics, SUCKS. And then in 1984, he went how many out of 50 states? 49. Because he's known as the great communicator. If I'm hoping to appeal to your patriotic spirit, why do people like me and you're growing up in this place where you're so much seems like disdain for America? Well, hopefully you turn the tide again. Because guys like this that can inspire people. We need people like this to unify and inspire a country.
We achieved so much, prospered as no other people on earth. It was because here in this land, we unleashed the energy and individual genius of man to a greater extent than has ever been done before. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look. The sloping hills of Arlington National Cemetery, with its row upon row of simple white markers bearing crosses or stars of David, they add up to only a tiny fraction of the price that has been paid for our freedom. Each one of those markers is a monument to the kind of hero I spoke of earlier. Their lives ended in places called Belleau Wood, the Argonne, Omaha Beach, Salerno, and halfway around the world on Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Pork Chop Hill, the Chosin Reservoir, and in 100 rice paddies and jungles of a place called Vietnam. Under one such marker lies a young man, Martin Treptow.
You should strive to be Martin Treptow. Not that you should strive to be dead, but you should strive to be Martin Treptow.
Who left his job in a small town barber shop in 1917 to go to France with the famed Rainbow Division. There on the Western Front, he was killed trying to carry a message between battalions under heavy artillery fire. We're told that on his body was found a diary. On the flyleaf, under the heading My Pledge, he had written these words: America must win this war. Therefore I will work, I will save, I will sacrifice, I will endure. I will fight cheerfully and do my utmost as if the issue of the whole struggle depended on me alone. We must realize that no arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. It is a weapon that we as Americans do have. Let that be understood by those who practice terrorism and prey upon their neighbors. As for the enemies of freedom, those who are potential adversaries, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people. We will negotiate for it, sacrifice for it. We will not surrender for it now or ever. We are Americans.
I know you're not as sentimental as me, but wow, I love that guy. Notice there at the end, America wants peace. America didn't want to drop the atomic bomb. That was a hard choice to make. Our utmost desire. In fact, one of his famous sayings is peace through strength. If you're not exuding strength as a country, then adversaries take advantage of your weakness. Adversaries take advantage of your weakness, perceived weakness. How weak do we look right now on the world stage? Peace through strength. We are American. We will not surrender for it.
When you said your parents' favorite president, I was about to say Trump.
Well, you know what? Here's the difference, though, and being realistic. They both kind of stand for the same thing. Love America. Like, there's no, you can tell it's not fake at all. Communication. communicator. He's very to Trump's
And no mean tweets.
I had no idea I was American.
Yeah, well, we're gonna remind you of that when you get to high school.
Can we not do work today?
You will definitely be reminded
I'm
when you come to
tired.
my history class that you're an American.
Are you emailing it to me?
No, I got it.
Oh, you got it.
I'm just
I've got a